In today's video, I show you Tempest Hold, the new Kickstarter from RM Printable Scenery. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGG is for this month. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of October of 2021, we have this printed and painted tower from DecoQuest, as well as 2 additional pledges for the Kickstarter that's currently running right now. We also have this Mythic Roll dice tower, Elven dice tower, as well as this dice box, as well as a couple of all-in pledges for that as well. And then finally, we have $100 going towards the Elven Lord's Treekin Kickstarter. So if you want to find out more, go ahead and use the link below to go to my Patreon page to get in on that. I've done a number of videos for RM Printable Scenery, so I'm just going to show a couple of links up here if you want to check out previous Kickstarters that they've had. They've also done a sci-fi set that we also did as a GGGG in the past. As well, this set, this printed and painted ruins portion of the STL files is also going to be one of the GGGGs for November, next month's GGGG. And this is only representative of a very small portion of what you're going to get with this Kickstarter. There's also going to be 3 all-in pledges for the digital version of the book. And we are going to go over to the computer to walk through the Kickstarter, which does end on November 22nd. I think this is the first Kickstarter that RM Printable is doing that does include an adventure book. And I really think this is going to be the wave of how you're going to be receiving all of the STL files, not only for the buildings that you're going to need in the adventure, but also all of the miniature files as well. They did send me a couple miniature files, but I didn't print those out. I only chose to print out this ruined set. But as you're going to see when we go over to the computer, there are tons and tons of buildings and miniatures that are part of this. All of these pieces I printed out on my printer at 0.2mm height, which I have done in the past. And that is plenty of resolution, I think, for terrain. And I've had no problems or issues printing out RM's scenery. So that has really been a good thing. You can print these out without any supports and they print out really cleanly and nicely. And these pieces in particular are modular, and so there's a lot of variability with this set. As well, I'm glad that they provide these gangways and planks because, again, as I've shown in some of my other videos, especially when I'm playing skirmish games, I do like to have height variation, and as well as being able to go underneath sort of these gangways. And so it just provides a lot of different kinds of variable terrain that you can have, not only for RPGs, but also I play a lot of tabletop miniature games, and sets like this is one of my favorites, where you can have a lot of ruins, but not necessarily intact buildings that will block lots of line of sight. This also, with ruins, I feel like does really well in being able to place miniatures up into the upper portions, whereas when you have whole buildings, you can't really represent miniatures going inside of buildings that well. So for tabletop skirmishes, I tend to prefer ruins over whole buildings. But with this set, you're going to have the whole gamut of just ruins as well as intact buildings, and there's just so many things that you're going to be getting with this that I think it's a great deal, not only for people who are interested in the RPG, but just to be able to have scatter terrain for your skirmish games as well. I do have a painting tutorial at the end, so use the timestamps below if you want to skip over to that. But let's go ahead and go over to the computer and check out the Kickstarter, and I can walk you through all of the different pledge levels that you have. All right, so here is the Kickstarter page for Tempest Hold. It's only been up for a couple of days. They've already raised about $25,000, so definitely going to be releasing stretch goals. But 26 days, it expires on November 22nd. So let's go ahead and see what is going on here. So just some background. And in terms of pledge levels, you can get the PDF of the adventure book, or you can just get the book only, and that's going to be about $41 US. And there's a bunch of early birds as of filming, which is Wednesday the 27th, although I'll be posting probably it'll be too late for the early birds. So I'll just go through the pledges that aren't the early birds. So the PDF and hardcover, both of them is $50. The STLs is $60, about $61. If you want the PDF of the adventure book and all the STLs, that's going to be about $70. And the all-in price is $81 US. And that gives you the STLs, PDF, and the hardcover book. Now, the pledge levels that are for the GGGGs is going to be this $69 or $70 pledge level here. So 3 people are going to be chosen by Bob to receive this all-in pledge, but you're not getting the hardcover book. So let's go ahead and walk through these. So like I mentioned before, just a ton of miniatures that are going to be part of the adventure. And here are a set of dwarves. And these are the tree folk, it looks like, as well as frost elves. And you have a council, I think this with the tail, I think that looks super cool. And check out all of these minions that you are getting, which is a lot of variety, and you're going to be able to print all these out according to how many you want for the adventure. And I do know that the PDF is coming out with stat blocks for all of the new monsters, as well as NPCs. So here's some undead. There's a golem. This guy looks super cool. So just a massive number of miniatures. Now we're going to get into the terrain. So as you can see here, this is their Tempest hold terrain. So I'm not 100% sure why they split it up into different packs, because you're getting all of these. If you're just getting the STL. So you're going to get all of the miniatures as well as these buildings. And I did print out some of the wall ruins here. This is more of a grave site with a mausoleum. And then now we're getting into some of the buildings. And here's a modular bridge that you can print out. And then here is part 2. And again, not sure why they're split up into different sections, but this is what I printed out. So the set that I showed you is just this and some of the walls, as well as the gangplanks and the scaffolding. So you can tell that you're getting a ton of stuff, a lot of buildings. I think this Wizard's Keep looks super cool with this little bridgeway here connecting these parts. So this set looks really interesting. And then here you're getting some scatter terrain, a lot of scatter terrain, which I appreciate a lot. It's really helpful for having cover on the battlefield. And then you have these various buildings here. Now this is what I am super excited about. You guys know that I am a huge fan of Dragon's Rest tiles. That is my preferred tile system because they are 1.5 inches. And if you haven't seen that video yet, go ahead and click up here top right, and that will show you my Hero Quest board, but I also use Dragon's Rest for almost all of my dungeon crawlers. And the fact that they are using Dragon's Rest system with the magnetic walls just adds a ton more variety and options for my dungeon set. So this in and of itself for me is worth it, just to get this crypt version with more wall options as well as doors. So this is what I'm super excited about. There's some cobblestones here and it looks like different designs. So I'm definitely interested in printing out a bunch of these alternative tile sets for my dungeon. So the book, the adventure book, is basically going to be giving you 11 encounters, new races, new classes, a bunch of, like I said, NPCs, stat blocks, as well as monster stat blocks, and all of the STL files to print those out if you want. You got new magic items and spells. And here you can click if you want to download the sample, you're going to get a sample of the adventure book as well as some of these miniatures to be able to print out. If you want to just sample it and see what the quality is, definitely just download this because this is free and you can check that out. And let me show you real quick just a sample. You got some really cool art in here, which I think is neat, and different encounters. So it's all set up for you. And here you have the first scenario where the players are going around town, searching around, and then they're going to have battles and encounters here. So again, you're able to print out these ruins. I would just use the ruins that I showed you before to create this, and then the wall for the outer wall section. Here's an NPC with all of his stat block here, as well as the stats for the hill giant zombie. I just really like these Kickstarters that have the all-in-one, where you can get the adventure, all of the STL files as well for both the miniatures and for your buildings, because that just means that as a DM, I can print out the pieces that I need as I go along in the adventure. It's sort of plug and play, and it's something that you can add in as a side quest for your current campaign that you're working on, or you can modify it to fit your campaigns. Some of the Kickstarters that I really like includes that. So I really enjoy the way that as a DM I'm able to plug and play these different pieces. Now I have a billion miniatures for D&D, so I don't necessarily need to print things out, but I like the option of, especially for the heroes, if they're really unique and the classes are different, then I do like printing out the heroes. But look at this. This looks incredible here. And there's a tutorial that you can go to if you want to check out how they painted it. But look how awesome that miniature is. And that miniature is huge. So look how fun it would be to paint that miniature. And here are some of the stretch goals that we have. Some more STLs for some NPCs. And looks like a playable character. Some more buildings. So we'll see. I think since they've raised 25,000, they're definitely going to hit this 30,000 relatively soon. So hopefully we'll see more stretch goals here. And then you have add-ons from previous Kickstarters. So this is a Birchwood Vale, as well as the Arvalon Hill, which was a video that I did a review for their terrain files. And then this is, I think, one of their first original Kickstarters, the Storm Guard. So you can also add that if you're hankering for more terrain. So that's pretty much it for the Kickstarter campaign. So there you have it. Hopefully this video was helpful for you in determining whether or not this is a set that will be good for you, not only for the RPG element of being able to have an adventure running through a 5e adventure with your party, or if you're going to want to use this to build up a town or a ruin set for your tabletop skirmishes. Please like and subscribe, and go ahead and use my link below to go to my Patreon page. Again, if you're interested in possibly being chosen to receive any of these for this month of October, which we are doing the draw on Saturday, October 30th, because our normal time of Sunday is Halloween. So we're going to be meeting early this month for October. But again, this set, as well as 3 pledges, digital pledges, are going to be the GGGG for November of 2021. Go ahead and stick around for the painting tutorial. Otherwise, happy printing, happy gaming. We'll see you next time. All right, so here I have printed out almost everything. I ran out of black PLA, so that's why it's purple, but I like printing out in black because any scratches that happens on terrain you don't really notice at all. And for the most part, everything here is printed without supports, and the only spots where there was some issues with that is underneath this arch, and I think right here for some reason. Got a lot of stringing there, but not over here. So this is just only a little bit wider, and it made that much of a difference. I don't really care. I just go back with my clippers and I clip that off. But if you don't want to do that, there are a couple of spots that you might want to add some additional supports. For the most part though, especially since these are ruins, they don't need to be really clean. So I don't really care about putting more supports. So I'm going to grab my go-to Krylon camouflage. This is camouflage brown. If you don't have this, Rust-Oleum also makes a dark brown, or you can just pick any matte dark brown as you can. And I just give this a good layer all around. And after I do one side, I'll move over and do the other side. And this is just a good foundation. This really dark brown works as a really good base for any terrain. And sometimes I'll do gray for stonework, but I found that really it doesn't matter too much. There isn't a huge noticeable difference whether or not you use gray or this dark brown. So I just, for ease, just use dark brown for everything. So just put a nice coat on all of your terrain, undercoating, and wait for it to dry and take it back in. We're starting off with some zinc, which is a dark gray, and I always use craft paint for all of my terrain. And just putting it on all of the stonework that is found on these pieces. And you're going to notice that there's a lot of bumpy parts, and we're going to paint that later with some olive green to represent moss and things like that growing. So don't worry about if you get gray on top of the moss. And as you see here, I actually leave quite a bit of space with the dark brown because again, having just variable colors on there is fine, but I'm just trying to touch up on most of the stonework. This is slate gray, which is a medium gray that I mix in with the zinc to have a medium gray color. And I'm going to use this to just highlight the stonework a little bit more so that it isn't that dark. So this time I'm just going a little bit lighter, not pushing it in as much as I did with the zinc. And this will just pop out some of the highlights on the stone. And again, don't worry about getting gray onto the wooden pieces because we're going to go ahead and put brown on that later. So just put that in all over the stone and you'll be good. Next we're going to do the wood with some milk chocolate. And all of this is Americana brand. If you can't find that, then go ahead and just find a medium brown. Any kind of craft paint is fine. And just go over all of the wooden pieces. And this is where you're going to cover up any gray that you accidentally got onto the pieces of wood. But I go ahead and put not just one coat, but 2 coats because that dark brown is really hard to cover with just 1 coat. So I typically do 2 coats. Next, I grab my honey brown, and this is going to be my highlight for all of the wooden pieces. And as you can see here, I'm just dry brushing on this lighter brown just to create a little bit more color differentiation and to lighten up the wood just a little bit. And you can just gauge and put as much or as little as you want, but I don't make it uniform across the whole wooden piece. I just make it splotchy because again, the color variation is good for just ruins. This is Georgia clay, and I'm just going to use it onto the roof and just trying to touch up the slate on the roof and leaving a lot of the bumpy parts, which again is going to be covered with the green as the moss. So just whatever color you want to put onto the roofs, just pick out the slats and you'll be good to go there. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab the avocado, which is a dark sage green, and I'm going to sort of stipple the color onto all of the bumpy parts that are found on the terrain. So with these wooden slats, it's not on all of them. This piece in particular does have quite a bit, and so I'm just going to put it on to wherever there are some bumps representing sort of the moss that's growing. And then all of the stone pieces has a lot of spots where you have the moss growing, and I just again stipple it or push it in to those spots. I'm not too worried about getting 100% coverage. I still want some of that gray or dark brown to show through, and that's the effect that you're going for. And pretty much this is what it looks like. I think the pieces tie in really well together, and the paint job is super quick. So I didn't spend a ton of time on the paint. As you can see here, you can get a nice effect for terrain really easily using this method. Very easy to do. I actually don't put a protective coat over my terrain pieces because again, I print in black, and whenever paint gets scraped off or anything like that, you're just seeing black underneath, so it's not a big deal. So hopefully this tutorial was helpful for you. Again, check out a lot of my other videos where I show you different kinds of terrain that you can use. But otherwise, we'll see you next time.